Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will talk about books. It is one of my favorite topics. I collect books, I love books, I kidnap books, I steal books, I buy books. I chose my house by the free walls available for bookcases. That was the only requirement for the house. The larger the walls, the better. So, hardly surprising, most of my library is dedicated to ships in one form or another. From naval history through maritime archaeology, all the way to books that are mostly useful for the shipmodelers. The majority of those books have already been presented on the other channel of OLHA BATCHVAROV, so head over there to see what is inside ship modeling books. For the rest of you, let's talk a little bit about Victory. When we speak of Victory, there are two misconceptions. First of all, we tend to call her HMS Victory. This is incorrect. The HMS initials did not emerge until the mid-19th century. None of the original sailors and commanders of Victory would have known her as HMS. They would have referred to her as His Majesty's ship, HM's ship, HMT's shortening ship, but never HMS. So this is the first misconception, quite widely used nowadays. The second, whenever we speak of Victory, we only think of Trafalgar, or at least the general public always thinks of the Battle of Trafalgar, and one of her most famous commanders, of course, Admiral Lord Nelson. And yet the ship had far more interesting history than this. The ship fought in far more contested battles and in tactically much more interesting situations than Trafalgar. And I can already feel the eggs and tomatoes being thrown at my way. So, let's see a little bit about these periods of her history. First and foremost, the ship was ordered in 1759 and was not commissioned until pretty much the final days of the 7 Years' War, until 1765. In other words, she was of the same vintage as the famous 74 gunship of the line Bellona. Both of them survived to the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Both of them had stellar service records in this. Victory, the way we know her nowadays, with the enclosed stern with black and ochre coloring, is really very late development. This did not happen until 1804, during her repairs actually of 1803. So she was in this way only in her last two final campaigns, the campaign of Trafalgar and subsequently when she served as flagship to Sir James Saumarez, Admiral Sir James Saumarez in the Baltic. For most of her career, however, she had the beautiful mid-18th century open stern with open galleries, with carvings, with decoration. Her sides had the natural color of pitched and tarred wood. And to my eyes, at least, she was far, far more beautiful in those days than in her later career. That, of course, is true for many other famous ships. Think of the USS Constitution. She certainly was more beautiful in 1805 than she ever was in her 1812 version. And yet all modelers choose the later versions of this ship. I had a very great privilege of knowing two of the archaeologists who have worked on her. I used to know the curator of HMS Victory, Peter Goodwin. And when I first met Mr. Goodwin, the first thing that he told me was, "Don't build another model of Victory." It took him about 5 minutes to realize that this is not why I'm visiting him, that I have other questions. And then the conversation became interesting. So let's look at some of the books that have been written on this famous ship. Starting one is the Owner's Workshop Manual. Not a bad book. It is one of the few books that actually show inside a badly reproduced and split over 2 pages copy of the original drawings showing the open sterns of the vessel. It has photographs that show up in other books also. It has some drawings, but from ship modeling point of view, it probably is not the most useful of the reference books. So let's put it to the back. It definitely is not the first choice to purchase if you're building another model of Victory. Then there are the Anatomy of the Ship series. Unfortunately, John McKay has drawn her only in her Trafalgar version. So the stern is as you would see it nowadays, which is a pity. It cuts a lot of the grace out of the ship. But otherwise, it is a typical anatomy book, detailed with drawings, Shipmodeler friendly, useful reference if that happens to be your cup of tea. One of the most useful books on the Victory is McGOWAN's HMS Victory, the Construction, Career and Restoration. And it is fully illustrated with drawings that were produced during the study of the vessel and the reconstruction. It is based both on the reality of the ship as is nowadays and also on archival material. It is beautiful, it is interesting. I got it as a gift from a family friend and I was deeply enamored with the book. It is a very useful reference. When OLHA BATCHVAROV was building for a client a model of Victory, this is the book that she used most as a reference, since that is the book I sent her. I probably should have sent The Anatomy of Nelson's Ships by Nepean Longridge. Oldie, but definitely Goldie. It was written in the late 40s. The model was built in the 1930s and 40s, around the end of the war. It is probably the most detailed, meticulously documented and studied reference for the Shipmodeler. It is by far the best and most useful. OLHA herself said that if she had access to this book at the time, that's the one she would have chosen to use. But second best to it would be McGOWAN's HMS Victory. Unfortunately, the book is now out of print. However, it is readily available on eBay for anything from $6 to $10, and it is also available on all the other used book online stores. God bless them for that. It is by far, as I said, the best of the references. Nepean Longridge was a master modeler. It is written by a ship modeler for ship modelers. His model was displayed until fairly recent times in the Science Museum in London. But then one of the particularly brilliant curators of that museum, I don't know who it is, and the museum is doing well to keep his name or her name hidden against the outrage of the public. He decided that ships and ship models and ship gallery is not relevant to modern times. It is not relevant to the far more diverse population that now inhabits the British Isles, so the whole gallery was destroyed and removed. To me, this is crime of monumental proportions, crimes against culture, because that gallery contained a brilliant collection of original dockyard and Navy board models from the Prince of 1670, one of the most gorgeous and sophisticated models ever constructed by humans, all the way down to Nepean Longridge's Victory and more modern builders' models of 20th century vessels also. But particularly the 18th century collection of models was probably second only to the National Maritime Museums. So, unfortunately, that beautiful resource is now gone and destroyed. But at least the book survives. No doubt the models do also somewhere, but they no longer are easily accessible. And with this, I believe we can close the topic of books on HMS Victory. At some point we will talk also how to gather enough information to construct a model of the vessel as she used to be shortly after her launching, and how she looked for most of her active career at such battles at which she was flagship as the Battle of Ushant from the American Revolutionary War, or the Rebellion of the Colonies, depending on which side of the conflict you sat, and of course, even the famous Battle of St. Vincent, 14th of February 1797, in which then Commodore Nelson distinguished himself by capturing 2 Spanish ships of the line. At the time, Sir John Jarvis's flagship in this battle was Victory, but Victory in her old beautiful view. Thank you for your attention, and again, comments down below, questions, write them down, and let me know what you would like to discuss.